Welcome to Always Be Connecting. I liken business to a journey up a mountain, and I'm only a little bit up from the very bottom, and working with digital transformation businesses, I can see up the mountain that there is quite significant things to think about for the future in terms of building all your aspects of your business at scale. So to delve deep into this, I'm talking to an expert in customer experience in retail, and that is Ross from Enterprise Ride. Ross Bark, hi. Thank you for coming on.
No problem at all. Good to be here.
Customer experience specialist, is that where you put yourself? What would you...
Yeah, particularly. I mean, understanding and working with businesses across retail and wholesale, but also into B2B as well in terms of customer experience, which is not just the storefront, but it's also in terms of the integration of all of those elements to capturing your customer information, how that gets utilised, and customer engagement overall. Yeah. Right through into the transaction and what happens to that transaction, how businesses manage that through, particularly if they've got both an online environment and they've also got a store network as well, and how that integrates together. So I work with a lot of well-known brands in Australia and New Zealand, worked on client side as well within businesses, and now consulting back to businesses as well.
So what stage of business do people start to feel the pinch that a digital transformation would ease?
Well, I think when you look at most businesses, it can start from a very small business, but a lot of the businesses where they've got a lot of complexity is where they've built up a business over a number of years. So you're talking businesses which are maybe $100 million in revenue plus. Well-known retailers down to those which might be a little bit smaller. But I think the key thing is that when you're looking at customer engagement, for any of these businesses, the dynamics are the same. The structure and the way in which you are able to understand what your brand is, to message that brand, and to have a frictionless experience for customers to deal with you, over and above what they're doing with others in that market, becomes key. The larger the business, obviously the more complexity, because you've got businesses which have store networks, they have warehouses, they have an online storefront, they might have multiple brands within that business, like Super Retail Group, which is transversing from Rebel Sport into Super Cheap Autos. So multiple brands is where we particularly deal with from an enterprise-wide perspective as well, and myself, yes. Different size businesses, different brands, different types of businesses which sit under the one umbrella, like Harvey Norman has Domain as well, and they're a franchise as well. So there's some other dynamics there that are at play in terms of how they work. And there's a lot of franchise businesses that actually sit within Australia and New Zealand where there's an overall brand or company, but the individual stores are owned separately. They're owned by another business, and they utilise that branding in the marketing, like McDonald's, right? But in this case, we're talking retail and wholesale.
Yeah, okay. And so it's not a set and forget process, digital transformation?
No, not at all. Digital transformation is effectively very broad in terms of what it means, because you could be focused in on, I need to replace my front end of my website because I want to get onto a modern platform, and I might be doing that simply for the fact that I'm on an old platform that's not being supported. That might also not necessarily offer benefit directly to my customers, but it's going to offer a lot of efficiencies within my business. But then on the other hand, you might be replacing your storefront with a new customer experience where you are effectively changing the dynamic of how you work with your customers. And there's a lot of businesses that over the years have obviously transformed what they're doing with their commerce solutions, their marketing solutions, and how they manage data into those solutions. And then, of course, you've got all of the business process that needs to manage behind that. Because when an order is taken online, obviously that needs to be managed through into the whole back end process of that business, the whole order to cash, in terms of how they manage that through from inventory to stock to warehousing and the financials, right? And then of course there's reporting that comes alongside that. So having that end-to-end understanding is key. And most businesses will not obviously do it all at once, although there are some businesses which we've worked with that have done that. Certainly working on foundations and getting if you've got a strong and back-end process, and you've got a back-end solution or system that is stable, and you've got a foundation there, it makes it much easier then to build on that with customer experience. And of course, customer experience now has become less homogenized. And what I mean by that is you used to have monolithic solution sets where you'd have a storefront solution or platform which had everything from your product information management to your front end to how you manage the back end of that site, your search function, your payments function. Now that is being made what we call more composable in the fact that businesses are using software as a service tools to bring that all together. So I might have a foundation in terms of a commerce engine or platform, but then what I'm doing is I'm then mixing that in with software as a service solutions which are best in breed for search and merchandising. So I can better improve the way in which my customers can search on my site, but I can also improve the way in which I provide and promote my products and my merchandise on that site as well, based on, it could be the user interaction. You know, when you go to sites now, they start to build a profile, start to understand the things that you're searching for, because they're going to promote those more to you. They're going to understand the interactions that you're doing on that website. Yeah. Or it could be in store as well. And that's the sort of next step where a lot of retailers are looking, is combining all of those data elements that they're seeing and those user interactions from a customer. Yeah. So you and I, if we are going into a furniture or electrical store, the things that we're looking at there then can make it easy for us to find those online. Generally, people will research online for certain products, particularly if you're buying furniture, right? You might go online and see what styles are out there, what colours, what might suit your living area, the dimensions, right, the sizing of that. But you're probably more likely then to go into store to sit on that couch to see it and feel it. Now, what I want as a consumer is a consistent experience, so that when I walk into that store, there's an element of understanding, well, maybe what I've been looking at before, right, without necessarily knowing everything about me. Yeah. If I'm allowing that to happen, if I feel comfortable with that, then there's no reason why companies can't promote that and provide that, you know, that increased customer service, if you like. But to actually do that takes a lot of work in terms of having the systems and solutions to manage that, because data these days is a very important commodity for businesses that they need to protect. Yeah. They need to manage. They need the right consent. First-party data from customers needs to be looked at from a perspective that you as a business have essentially the privilege of collecting that information. And there's a trust there. You've got to build that trust with that customer. They've got to have trust in you that I'm going to provide information to you because I'm going to get something from that. There's a transaction there. And there's trust that you're going to look after and maintain that information for me. Now, at the moment, and I know I'm sort of traversing into different things, but at the moment there's a lot of retailers, wholesalers and businesses which don't necessarily understand the implications of the data that they're holding. They will collect data and then they will push out marketing messages, which you're probably familiar with, in terms of just general, I'm going to just push out messages to that customer. Yeah. So that broad sweeping information.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you is there's quite a lot of businesses in the market at the moment that are doing the talking but not the listening.
That's right.
I've got 500 of these and I want them to buy them and I'm going to keep pushing it, you know, rather than sort of, well, what do these people want? So, like, what's the difference between using digital transformation for the good of the customer, with the customer's wants and needs in mind over, you know, everyone wants revenue, of course, like that's how you continue your business and that's how you can do more and aim towards philanthropy or whatever you want to do, or like whatever your vision is. But like, you know, what's the difference between doing it for the customer and ripping them off?
Well, I think sometimes there's a grey line in that, but I think the key thing is there's a big difference in terms of what the goals are for that company or organisation or brand. You know, brands spend a lot of money in terms of building their reputation and trust, and there's an emotive element around that in terms of how brands work with customers overall. Whether you're doing, you're selling B2C or whether you're a B2B business, a lot of those are built on relationships, particularly in Australia and New Zealand. I think the key thing is that the outcome of what businesses are trying to provide is to reduce that friction that they have in terms of understanding their customers, communicating with those customers, and the products or services that they're trying to provide.
So we don't end up on a 40-minute phone call to someone.
Correct.
We don't have time for.
Correct. I mean, you will see businesses where, they're within an industry where there's little competition, and therefore they're able to, in effect, set pricing which you wouldn't necessarily see as being beneficial to customers. We've seen that with the airline industry. I mean, look at Qantas over the last few years in terms of being able to, essentially, work revenue and profitability over customer benefit and experience, which is obviously changing in that approach because they've seen the backlash that's happened with that.
Sure.
I think the key thing is that any businesses that then might preference or prioritise costs and profitability over customer experience over the short term, that might provide a benefit, but overall customers will look on that very badly and will then start to jump ship. You'll start to see a loss of particularly brand reputation and trust, because brand reputation and trust takes a long time to build.
Yeah, right.
But it doesn't take very long for that to lose.
Yeah.
Because, and there's a lot of businesses that will do very well in terms of that customer experience online, but that end mile experience that you have with them can then dent that trust and reputation. I mean,
when you turn up for your goods.
That's right. I've worked with businesses where they're using external parties to do their end mile, delivery and freight, and of course that's been letting them down because the returns experience, that experience of presenting, it could be damaged goods that get delivered or shipped to a customer. Then you've got a return experience which is, well, it might be automated, and that's where we've got to be careful around automation and AI, because you could apply algorithms and things to the way in which you do a process, but in some of those cases you need oversight from a person in terms of dealing with that customer, because there's
a committee almost.
There's differences in terms of the way in which people need to understand what they can and can't do, and the things that you can step in and say, well, actually we can do this for you. There's flexibility there that needs to happen, and in many cases it does, if you're managing things or trying to just push people online for communication and contact, that can be detrimental to your brand, because people ultimately, if they've got an issue, want to talk to somebody to have that experience. Because where do they go to vent? They'll go to social media, or they'll vent to other people.
Cancel subscriptions.
And things like...
Not use you,
Yeah, and we're seeing that, and we've seen that with businesses where they've now... There's been retailers where they've cut out that phone customer service contact, and now they're bringing it back because they've realised that you can't do without that, because you have to maintain that with the customer. You have to have flexibility in the way in which you approach that.
AI bots aren't going to solve the harder problems.
No, that's right. And there needs to be oversight. It's complementary. It's a enabler, but it's not the whole solution. And that's the key thing. It's the same with any... If we put it down to, a retailer or a business or a brand that is looking at what fundamentally do I want, that comes down to understanding the outcomes that I'm trying to drive with my customer and my business. The solution itself is an enabler of that. It is not necessarily the whole solution. It's not going to provide every single answer to you. You can't just plug in, particularly for medium and larger businesses, plug in a solution and expect it to provide all the elements of your business.
So
And that's where transformation becomes key, right? And that's where we work to understand that enabling technology, and SAP as an example is fantastic enabling technology, right? But it requires the ability to actually understand, one, what are other customers doing in your industry? How can that best work for you? What are the outcomes that you're trying to do? Where are you at the stage in terms of what you're looking to do? What's the roadmap in terms of what you're trying to achieve? And working with you to then get the best utilization out of that solution, the best enablement out of that solution. And that comes from having really experienced people that have been through multiple iterations, multiple transformations, have a very clear understanding of how to take you on that journey and to manage that journey with you. That's really the important thing in terms of having successful transformations and meeting your customer requirements, because customer requirements change all the time.
Yeah. Well, as a small to medium business ourselves, at the moment, any add-on that we want to put to our to sort of have frictionless experience, more convenience for our customers and things, is a subscription. It's another amount to pay, and they become more siloed, and like, so you've got someone over here, someone over here, someone over there. Is that ongoing, or are there some platforms that kind of bring or try and bring it all under one umbrella?
Well, I think the key thing is not trying to necessarily bring it all under one umbrella, but having solutions that integrate well together. And depending on your size of your business, if you have the internal capability to be able to manage some of that, then that's fine. But there's a lot of businesses that don't, because what you're looking for is then to have some really clear, intuitive solutions that do certain things really well, but you'd probably be towards something which is based to standard, if you like, right? So you have a solution or system that is based to standard, that has the functionality that you need. And in many cases for these businesses, you're not necessarily using a fair chunk or percentage of the things that you've got, right?
Yeah.
So
yes,
I would, our recommendation is always to look at, can you actually go back to standard? And can you start with the standard with a platform, right? An example could be, you're looking to replace your ERP, and at the moment you've got a very customized ERP, but you could actually move on to potentially a standard ERP in the cloud. SAP's introduced public cloud, which is a solution which is effectively a standard in cloud solution, which of course you can configure and set up for your business, right? There's various industry type flavors of it, but the key thing is that you're then working to a structure or a process which is under one banner, which is under one structure, and then you can build around that. That's what we call, having a lot of technical debt, where, as you said, you've got a lot of different things that you're working with. It is difficult because I align it to, now how many streaming services do we all have to subscribe to watch a particular show? Well, before we had normal commercial TV or ABC, SBS. So what we do is we turn on the TV, and you had 6 channels, and then you had pay TV, and you're consuming this now.
Yeah.
Because it's not just one streaming service. You've got to have 1 or 2 or 3.
And you're subscribed to,
and they're all different.
One just for one show.
Correct. And they're all different. The interfaces are different, aren't they? Right? Different logins. I have to go and find the app. I'm going to go on, and I'll go on that one and that one. And that's where software and solutions in the cloud have become as well, right? Because one will do this particular thing, right?
Yeah.
And one will do another. And they have different interfaces and different ways in which they're working. The key thing is how you can actually define the outcome that you're looking for. So if I'm looking for something which, as an example, right, I really want my customers to be able to come in and search really easily, as most brands do on their website, and find a particular product that they're looking for. And at the same time, I want to be able to present, it could be a new product. It could be something which I know connects with something they've bought before. That's where you then start to use AI because that can collect that information and then help you present things back to that customer, which is quite personalised. Because to do that over a few customers is fine, but if you're doing over hundreds, to be able to create hundreds of different messages on a daily basis to a customer without having an AI tool is really hard. So that's where AI actually can help to do that. And there are brands and businesses that are investing in that to be able to do that. That is a particular outcome that you're trying to solve. And that doesn't necessarily then take over your whole commerce solution. And we've got customers that are using SAP Commerce Cloud where they've invested in a software as a service search and merchandising tool, and they're doing that because it allows them to complement and add on what they've got within their existing solution and provide an integration, closely coupled integration into their commerce platform to do that. And it's the same way in which companies are now using inbuilt AI into ERP. But to be able to use that, so I can use conversation to find information, data, and provide reporting out of my business process system. Before it was having to go to different screens, create those reports, look for that information on quite difficult, non-intuitive sort of front-end screens, or I had to build those, right?
Yeah.
And now it's becoming quite seamless in terms of the way in which it works, saves a lot of time and effort, improves efficiency and gives me better information and more timely information that I can react to. But again, it gives you the information, but you need someone that's very good at analysing that to be able to make the right decisions. It's not necessarily going to make the decisions for you. It'll provide you an easier way. And it's the same with brands in terms of promoting to their customers in terms of customer experience transformation. You are giving yourself more tools, but at the same time, that's coupled with how do you actually then talk to that customer? How do you market to that customer in the best way possible that they will see value in your product and service, and you can lead them through that process. And then, of course, it's not just that once off. The key thing in terms of building improved revenue and profitability is having customers that come back.
Yeah. And that comes back to the trust as well.
Correct.
Interesting, because I was reading today about the most and least trusted brands in Australia.
Yeah.
And very, very much resonates as well. Like Bunnings was number one trusted, and a lot of the telcos were in the least trusted. Why are the telcos suffering, do you think? What's...
Well, I think
why are they losing trust?
Well, I think the telcos have lost trust through one. We had the Optus in terms of data breach, which was significant, and there was a lot of trust lost in Optus when that happened, and continues to be because they had information and a huge amount of data on their customers, and particularly when you're signing up to phone plans, you're providing dates of birth and license numbers and things like that.
Yeah.
Which they had a third party that was able to, hackers, which were able to get in through a third party login and password and effectively take that information and then try to sell it on the dark web. And then it became, distributed out there. And so you have people's personal and private information that was taken and utilised. So there's been a lack of trust in from that. There's also a lack of trust in the fact that service levels and the provision of service by many of them have not been consistent.
Yeah.
And we're consistently seeing that in terms of utilities. In some cases it's not necessarily something they're trying to drive as an outcome, but it is something where the customer experience is failing.
Well, it goes back to needing to make that 40-minute, being even kind there, 90-minute, 2-hour
something goes wrong.
Call of trying to solve a problem.
Yeah. And it's also quite difficult to find information, even now, if you're looking to go and buy get a phone or a phone plan on, looking at what you need.
Yeah.
It's become and has always been a little bit of a complex thing to go through.
Are we being harsh to the telcos though, or is it really complicated for them, or are they just behind the 8 ball in understanding digital transformation?
No, I think they're not behind that 8 ball. I think there's certain companies that are doing quite well in terms of their experience. I mean, I think, but if you look at the telcos overall, I think the key thing is that there's been a lack of consistency in the way in which they promote and provide their services to customers, both from what are they offering and what are you getting, and the consistency of that, which I don't think is necessarily the technology behind that, because they've been investing heavily in that. But it is like many of, and the banks are similar, where they've got these big systems that they've had for many, many years, and they've put customer portals on top of that, and it's quite difficult then to manage the way in which that information is provided and the transactions that happen with that.
So its foundations were built in the 50s. And
yeah, but I think they're trying to, they are certainly spending a lot of investment in terms of improving that, particularly around bundling different services together and promotions. I mean, Telstra, as an example, they have a rewards program where you can earn points, and you have different levels, and they offer discounts through other service providers, whether it's for movie tickets or, concert or entertainment. You can spend that to redeem that for various products and services as well. But yet again, if you're trying to go online there and look for certain pieces of information, I think there is still a bit of friction in that. If you go into a Telstra store, in many cases they're franchised, so not necessarily consistent experience that you might have dealing directly with Telstra online versus what you might get in store, and the information or pricing that you might get can sometimes be different as well. And that's where it becomes really difficult. But that's difficult for a lot of businesses which have a number of stores. They may own those stores, they may not. And then they've got an online presence as well, where in some cases it's quite a friction, there's a lot of friction in that experience in terms of being able to find what you're looking for, to try that and see that and test that and then to buy that. There's some brands and retailers out there which effectively are really trying to enable you. They use online as an enabler to get you to go into store.
Yeah.
So they don't. It's not about necessarily providing the best experience for you to purchase online, but as an enabler for you to go into store and make the purchase there. But for a lot of customers now, when we look at some of the online stores that simply sell online, in terms of pure online retailers, they obviously their whole experience is around that whole process online because they don't have a store network for you to go through.
So interesting as well that we're talking about the full range of operations in a business, of HR and procurement and all these sorts of things. And you deal with customer experience in retail specifically.
Retail, wholesale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And consumer goods as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But so, and in marketing, there's a kind of rule that part of your marketing is customer experience. So like actually delighting your audience, or making them happy from something. And like we've seen some of these things in retail emerge. Like I went into maybe River Island in the UK when I was there, and when I went in, it somehow scanned what I took in, and it had a thing on the door of you've got these, do you need it in a different size? Like, so I don't have to have that awkward, you all right in there part with someone who's coming by. I can just do it like that. So these sort of creative, interesting ideas, it's still frictionless, I guess. Do you find that in transformations where there's a need to sort of make the user experience better through design and creativity.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you only have to look at some of the better brands in terms of the way in which you might go into a store in terms of that consistency. And there are a lot of businesses that do that quite well. I mean, we work with some really strong businesses which provide, elements of that. And I think the key thing is that when you're looking at any online storefront, as an example, the consistency of what that messaging is needs to match the brand. So you have certain brands which are obviously going to have more innovation in terms of what they're providing, and that needs to also be represented in the way in which you go into store as well.
Sure.
So it really is around that consistency in terms of the way in which that works.
That's interesting. To be equally innovative at every touch point.
But there's also customers like predictability as well, right? So if you change things too much, you might get backlash as well because and there are businesses and brands where they're trying to change up things, and there's that sort of feeling of predictability. And I know when I go onto the site, I'm going to find certain things here to be able to search for products or find the things that I want. If you change that dramatically, that can have an impact as well in terms of how customers see that, because they're used to doing it one way and you're changing it completely to do it another way, can have an impact in terms of them finding it really difficult to be able to then find the things that they could find before. And I think that's also part of it as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So on one hand, you're trying to avoid the 40-minute phone call, and on the other hand, there's a sort of a delight element of, this brand is innovative at this stage, and at this stage in a consistent way. That's really like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as an example, Uniqlo recently changed their website where they moved to effectively their whole product menu, down to the bottom of the page is essentially a magnifying glass, which most people would associate with a search tool, but it's not. You press on that, and that's how you go into and see the catalogue of items, which normally that sort of sits at that top line navigation. They've moved that into sort of one navigation button.
Yeah, okay.
Central navigation button. And there's been backlash on that. They only recently introduced that, and there's been backlash on that because a lot of people are saying, well, I'm going through and trying to find products now. Where are they? I can't find them anymore.
Yeah, because they associate that button with something else.
Well, they associate it as a search.
That's not the menu. Where's the menu?
That's not a search. It's effectively a search, but for the entire catalogue, right? So most people, when they see that, they think, well, that's just your standard sort of search tool. But actually, I just want to go top line menu and go and look at different catalogues, whether I'm looking for men's or women's or whatever it is, depending on the type of variant or metric that I'm trying to find, or product set. So that's, for some that are new to the site, they might find that fantastic. For those that are used to going and purchasing, they'd probably find that quite difficult because the predictability there is gone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a viable strategy to try, right? But it's not necessarily one that's going to be accustomed to everybody.
Yeah.
And you'll find people will react badly to that in many cases. It's the same as if you go into a store and they've changed the whole way in which that store looks or feels. And many brands that keep consistency in terms of store, like Bunnings, JB Hi-Fi, etc.
Yeah.
Obviously have a lot of success with that and the way in which they then present that online as well. So you'll see that consistency, both from their online and then in terms of what you see in store as well, right?
Because best case scenario is they get annoyed by it and they try and contact and feed it back. But for everyone else, maybe they don't have the loyalty to
That's right.
Uniqlo.
That's right.
Yeah.
So how do you compete? I mean, we work with Freedom Furniture, and Freedom obviously competes with Temple and Webster online. What is their clearly their differentiation? They've got a store network which they can utilise, and so being able to put that consistently together. So when I go in and I'll search for a couch, I'll search for a table, search for a piece of furniture, I can get that experience of easily searching for and doing my research online, but then I can go into store and sit on it. I can see the actual colour because particularly when you're looking at those type of products, it's hard to see that necessarily and visualise that online unless you've bought it before, you've seen it before. So, that helps a lot. And what they're doing is they're personalising as well. So they're utilising that to be able to personalise, what they are looking at or you're looking at, and being able to then manage that through into a fantastic store and online experience. And they're investing in that as well because they see the benefit in being able to do that and improving the way in which you can interact across the whole experience, from when I'm looking for something to buying that or making the decision to buy that, and then the experience of receiving it, post-sale customer experience, whether there's a returns element there potentially. All of those become really important in terms of what you need to do with your digital transformation. Because digital transformation, again, is not just I go onto a website, this is what I see, and transacting online. It's the overall end-to-end of how that business is managing that customer.
And what that customer wants. And what that customer expects. And I love the consistency.
Yeah, one of the things that is asking that question continuously, and I know it can, which is what is the customer actually is seeing, or how do they perceive you and their experience? And because most retailers, if not all, are constantly sending you surveys and feedback to get your impression and understanding of how things are working, or they're using social to talk about the good and the bad and in between, right? But in some cases, it's also around being able to look at your roadmap in terms of what you're trying to achieve as well, and bring that together. Predicting future customer behaviour can be very difficult, and in some cases you need to. Well, the key thing around digital transformation is understanding that there's a fluency in terms of customer and their expectation, and having a system and solution which is flexible, so that you can amend and change and mould it.
And bigger companies will struggle with that agility.
Well, that's where you need to invest in technology that can provide that agility for you, that you're able to do that. I think the key thing is that a lot of these solutions and systems in many cases can be over-engineered to the point where just making small or multiple changes becomes an encumbrance to a business to do that. But that's becoming less so now, because you've got more composable solutions which allow you to plug and play with areas where you can make changes which are codeless. You don't necessarily have to write code and develop on them to make those changes. And that becomes a key thing as well. And transformations in themselves don't necessarily have to be a full encompassing, I'm changing everything that I'm doing or replacing something. It's how can I better utilise what I've got and transform that into something which is going to improve a repeat purchase. It's going to improve conversion rates. It's going to improve my average order value that I'm trying to drive. And that could be we're talking small percentages here, which can lead to a substantial impact on a business, particularly in times where people are conscious about how much they spend on certain things, and
the data
that they're providing.
It's actually incredibly simple. The premise of digital transformation is quite simple, and I've been working alongside digital transformation companies like yourself for a few years, and it's taken some time to get my head around it, because there's lots of acronyms, ERP and so on and so forth. But it's the premise is simple. You just need clever people to put the technology in.
Well, I think you need clever people to put the technology in, but I think you also need to have, and this is on both sides, on the business side, and obviously the people that you get to support you to do that.
Yeah, right.
But I think the key thing is it's also having the right technology that fits within what you're trying to achieve, that gives you that agility and can enable you in the best way.
And has room for growth as well.
That's right.
So you can scale.
So you can scale and you can do the things you want to do. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at the number of solutions that are available to brands and businesses from a customer experience perspective. It becomes quite difficult to traverse that. I mean, it's like,
and the
as I
customers
said,
are
streaming
feeling the
services
same.
and
The customers are feeling the same.
yes, they are.
Yeah.
So what it's sometimes, well, it does. It comes down to having strong enabling technology, but also in what is your current solution set? What is actually going to best fit with that?
Yeah.
Right. And who's going to be best to help you to achieve the outcomes that you're looking for? I have found, and I think it's to the detriment of many businesses where they have, and it is difficult from an investment perspective, where they are trying to internalize everything.
Yep.
And in doing that, yes, you can bring in some great people into your business, but in many cases, having people that actually are working across multiple businesses that can bring that experience and expertise actually helps considerably in terms of being able to help a company enable and manage that through on an ongoing basis, because it's not just about doing that transformation, it's about what's next. What's on the roadmap? What are other businesses doing? Where are they in terms of your maturity level?
Yeah.
And what does that mean, right?
It's very insular, isn't it?
When you're working within a business, you become very insular in terms of that business and driving the outcomes, particularly that you might be working on a transformation program within that business, and marketing is saying, well, we want this. IT is saying we want that. You've got business product owners saying they want something else, and you're trying to traverse that together. And that's where having a partner and having people that can come in and help you do that.
Yeah,
it's like akin to getting a buyer's agent. You're buying and selling a house, which if you're trying to do that yourself as the person that's buying and selling the house, you can't have the same conversations on both sides of the fence to get the best outcome. Yeah. Because one, you're really emotionally part of that whole thing. But secondly, you can't have the same conversation in terms of being able to get the best outcome, because you're in it, you're part of it. Having someone that can come in and actually traverse that provides a more independent view, and something which actually provides, I think, a stronger sort of trust that can be brought in to manage all those different mechanisms that happen. Now, I like to say good business transformation, good digital transformation comes from having the right people that can traverse all of the different stakeholders.
Yes.
And it's a stakeholder engagement. Yeah. It's not necessarily a successful transformation project is around good and strong transformation stakeholder engagement.
That's so funny because it's similar to marketing. That it's all about. Yeah. It's all about working together and making everyone happy.
Well, yeah, but
in some way.
But in many cases, it's about getting the best outcome that people feel and understand that they are getting what they need. But it's not. You can't be all things to all people in terms of being able to navigate that and push that. And that is that's a key thing in terms of being able to achieve what you need to do.
Right.
And I think that's key in any project or any organisation that's trying to go through that process and trying to see success with that. But you need to have the right stakeholder engagement within your organisation, but that needs to be driven, right? It needs to be managed, and having strong partners around you to be able to do that can help significantly, particularly those which have worked across retail and wholesale for many, many years in your local environment. Right? Yeah. We have a global economy, which is great, but having people in Canada or North America trying to understand a business in New Zealand, it's it's a different environment. It's a different understanding of the outcomes that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. They're fascinating, Ross. We didn't quite even get to deep diving on data security, which
we can
I
do
know
that next time.
you're a big fan
No,
of.
that's a subject in itself, and I'd love to talk about that, as I said, because I think around data security and being able and cybersecurity, I think there's a lot of information there for small and medium businesses, which would be good to talk about, actually.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, we'll look to get you in for a part 2. How do people connect with you, and what kind of people are you looking to connect with?
Well, certainly you can connect with me on LinkedIn very easily and find me at Ross Park there, and through enterprise-wide as well. I think in terms of connecting with people, very happy to have conversations with any size of businesses which are looking at where they've got challenges, or they're not sure about what's next for their solution, or where do they sit amongst their competitors? What's out there? What are the sort of things that they're not necessarily sure? They're trying to they've built a business plan and they've got a business plan for their business, but they'd like to validate that as well and understand how that sits within the environment that they're in and the market and industry.
Yeah.
Those are the sort of things that we do, has been able to actually do an assessment and come in and have a look at that, and really either do a high level or a deep dive into how we can see some of the things that can benefit them.
Yeah.
And some of the recommendations that can come from others in the industry and other industries which are doing different things, which could provide, I think, some impetus to do enhancements or make some changes or better utilise what they've got. It's not necessarily about replacing what they've got today. Yeah. It could be actually, it's really better utilising what they've got, one, better engaging in terms of what they have, and two, then looking at what's next in terms of how they can get some of that incremental growth, because incremental growth and utilisation of your current solutions actually becomes a fantastic impetus to then building on and growing momentum. And getting momentum, yeah. And that's where we can help. That's where I can help. And, very happy to have those conversations.
And enterprise-wide is in an exciting position at the moment, hey? You've got a new managing director.
That's right. So Evan Mantis, who joined us from SAP, that had been working at SAP for over 17 years and was heading up retail for SAP in Australia and New Zealand, has really come into our business with a very strong understanding of retail and wholesale and what businesses are doing, but also in terms of really bringing some really strong expertise in business transformation and digital transformation. And working with us to help and support what is and to lead, which is a growing part of our business and a very exciting part of our business as well going forward.
Yeah, amazing. Lots to think about and get your head round with the technology, and interesting to think about the future as you're building things out. Like, maybe it's wise to reach out to someone before putting all your eggs in one basket of CRM or
more marketing, commerce, anything. I think the key thing is, the key thing is that when you look at what's next and what you're trying to validate within your business is to be able to go through and have some of those conversations and validate that before you're making decisions in terms of what you're going to do.
Because we're all building businesses. Yeah,
I mean, everyone wants to be agile and get straight into things, but you can have agile delivery. It doesn't necessarily agile enablement, but it does benefit to take some time to understand what you're trying to achieve and the outcome that you're looking for without going into the depth and detail of your requirements, because they can change over time as well. So it's foundational. What am I wanting to achieve? What's the outcome? Yep. What is my business case that I'm looking at, which could be based on a budget. It could be based on a timeline. It could be based on a particular requirement that you need. It could be compliance. Influenced. But at the end of the day, once you have that baseline, and then you can start to iterate on that, and then you can move into an agile scenario from doing that. That's certainly
And scale.
the scale,
Yeah.
which becomes important. Yeah.
They're beautiful. Thank you so much, Ross, and we'll get you in for a chat about
Thanks, Lindsay. Great to chat today.
data security. Thanks.
No problem.